In the natural world, a canary's silence signals danger. In our world, anomalies might be the warning we've ignored for too long. We're investigating the most baffling occurrences, the events that defy explanation and leave scientists scrambling for answers. Could these be the first signs of a catastrophic shift? A glimpse into a future where chaos reigns supreme. Prepare to question everything you thought you knew about the world around you.
First on our list today, we have Project Overcast, more commonly known by the name Operation Paperclip. The project was an effort that took place after the Second World War between 1945 and 1959. The goal was to bring the top scientists from Germany and Austria over to the United States for employment opportunities, giving the US a significant leg up in the world of scientific and technological development advancements. Of course, the United States government was not at all naive to the fact that during the time of recruitment, Germany was heavily occupied by, well, I'm not allowed to say it, but it rhymes with Yahtzees. Harry Truman, president at the time, made sure to put measures in place to forbid NASA from bringing into the country any such recruitments. Did NASA listen? No. And among the recruits was infamous Wernher von Braun, who played a key role in the development of the V-2 rocket for Yahtzee, Germany. And Wernher wasn't the only one of his kind to be recruited and given asylum by the US. In fact, there were hundreds more recruited by NASA, making Operation Paperclip one of the agency's largest political scandals to date. Speaking of scandals, and remember this is part 2, so really nothing NASA does at this point should be coming as a surprise to any of us, but once again it seems that they've managed to make the impossible happen. If you've seen part 1, you know that unfortunately many astronauts and cosmonauts have lost their lives either in space or on the ground due to tragic and sometimes avoidable accidents. Well, the very small sliver of a saving grace would have to be that when this happened, at least the families are well taken care of, right? Well, wrong. In fact, you might be just as shocked as I was to learn that all the way up until 2003, astronauts working under NASA had not one shred of life insurance. In fact, in preparation for the Apollo 11 moon landing mission, Neil Armstrong, Edwin, Buzz Aldrin, and the rest of the team actually signed autographs so that their loved ones would have something of value to sell should the astronauts be unable to make it home. Of course, the policies have changed, but the fact that it took NASA until 2003 to do it, not a great look. Okay, for our next point, let's move on to something a bit more positive. While NASA has been known for making some pretty negative faux pas, there's no denying that on the flip side of their downfalls, they have been able to achieve some pretty amazing things. Some things we're aware of, such as the moon landing, the International Space Station, and the Hubble telescope, and some things we've been kept in the dark about. And this one is for my sci-fi fans. In 2015, a document was released revealing that NASA had been working on a very special feat, achieving warp drive technology acceleration beyond the speed of light. Sounds pretty far out there, right? Well, I guess NASA has a far reach, as in April of 2015, a team working on various concepts for spacecraft thruster advancements seems to have accidentally done the impossible when lasers shot through a resonance chamber traveled at an accelerated rate of over 300 million meters per second. The speed of light is 299,792,458 meters per second. While this is incredible, the team who achieved this scientific anomaly doesn't actually know how they did it, and so naturally they haven't been able to do it since. Next up on our list today, we have the Boeing X-37 spaceplane, a highly secretive, unmanned space shuttle that has been known to orbit Earth for up to 908 days at a time. While the spaceship isn't under NASA's name, it definitely falls under their jurisdiction, as it is said that its year-long missions, carried out by the US government, are in an effort to conduct technological experiments. The spaceplane is quite small, taking off and landing via a runway, and while its mission logs are sealed, it has been photographed on many occasions. It has been highly speculated that the purpose of the spaceplane is much more than simply conducting experiments and collecting data, with some saying that it has been used to spy on foreign countries and governments, and others believing that it is a preemptive protection measure for imminent upcoming space war. What do you guys think? And of course, at our halfway point, we're gonna keep things light today and talk a little bit about a topic that is so overplayed, but also never really gets old, and that is aliens. More specifically, aliens on Mars. Now, we're gonna have to take this one with a grain of salt, but do me a favor and try your best to keep an open mind. In 2014, Jackie, a woman who claimed to have worked on the Mars rover project in 1979, came forward to share her story. She told the public that while monitoring the rover's live video feed, she noticed two humanoid figures in what appeared to be spacesuits approach the camera. She ran to tell her bosses and then went to return to her station, but it seemed she'd been locked out of her room and the whole thing was covered up by the agency. While the figures were originally thought to be aliens, now many conspiracy theorists believe that perhaps what she uncovered was not extraterrestrial life forms, but rather a secret manned mission to Mars. And again, I'll let you guys decide the answer to this one. Alright, next up we have the James Webb Space Telescope, a $10 billion piece of highly advanced technological equipment sent into space on December 25th of 2021. If you think the Hubble is cool, you're gonna go crazy for this guy because the James Webb Space Telescope was actually designed to capture images too far and too faint for the Hubble, making it quite possibly the most advanced telescope in existence to date. In fact, it has been reported by scientists at NASA that using the James Webb, they were actually able to see the edge of our universe, a previously unreachable feat. I really can't decide if that's terrifying or amazing, so I'm gonna go with both. Because of the incredible reach of the telescope and its ability to capture clear images even at a wildly far distance, many people believe that its quest for deep space discoveries has been used as a cover-up for the fact that the United States government has been using the NASA-made marvel to spy on the people of Earth and gather intel again on foreign governments. I mean, it's totally possible, but I think they have the Boeing for that, right? Okay, next on the list we have another pretty big embarrassment for the space agency. You know, the space agency that is said to be at the forefront of global technological advances. The agency employing some of America's top scientists, physicists, and engineers. Well, you'd think that based on NASA's roster, they'd have little to no problem when it came to keeping their systems secure and their secrets safe from outsider access, but, you know, NASA has actually been hacked a number of times, believe it or not, perhaps the most famous incident taking place in 1999 when James, at just 15 years of age, hacked into the agency's databases and obtained incredibly sensitive information, including source codes and proprietary software worth millions of dollars. In 2000, James came under the investigation of the FBI, but it wasn't until 2007 that he was arrested for his crimes, which included stealing data from NASA defense contractors. James, however, was never convicted of his crimes, as in 2008, after almost a full year of strenuous legal battles, it was reported that he took his own life in an attempt to escape prosecution. The legitimacy of James's death, however, was called into question by many members of the public who wondered if it really was the young man's decision to end his own life, or if perhaps there was something much more sinister at play. Maybe a cover-up attempt by the government or NASA, fearing what might come to light should the case continue. Starting off our top 3 today, we have the incredibly elusive series of NASA missions to Africa. These strange occurrences came to light after NASA aircrafts were spotted touching down on an American airstrip located in eastern Africa. When the agency was questioned about its presence in the foreign country, they had originally declined to comment. It wasn't until after the public began speculating their arrival in Africa to be in regards to military activity, anti-terror efforts, ground relief, and war preparation that NASA came forward with a statement, claiming that their reasoning for landing in Africa was to conduct ground observations that would allow scientists to better understand biodiversity in the area. Okay, but if that's true, why didn't they just say that in the first place? I don't know, you guys, something seemed off here, but as always, let me know what you think. Next on our list today, we have NASA refusing to recognize that they might just be way off in their calculations of Earth's close proximity asteroid sizes due to insufficient calculation methods. In a 33-page scientific paper released in 2013, author and co-founder of Intellectual Ventures, Nathan Myhrvold, highlighted the ways in which NASA had incorrectly calculated the size of 164,000 asteroids, and offered solutions for recalculating in order to correctly identify the threat level posed by each one. In the article, Nathan also stated that any mistake made by a factor of just 2 in diameter is a mistake of a factor of 8 in energy, meaning that any calculation of impact would change drastically with even the smallest calculated increase to an asteroid size. In 2018, 5 years after the initial reports were published, NASA responded to the paper saying that it contained many mistakes and lacked peer review, but they failed to provide to the public any new information backing their original methods and proving their original calculations. Perhaps NASA got it right, but honestly, if the Mars rover observer from part 1 of this video is any indication, I really don't trust their math. Like, at all. And finally on our list today, we have NASA's solar competition. Solar power competition, that is. NASA became pretty sheepish when a number of reports were released stating that far ahead of them in the pursuit of a large-scale solar energy source is none other than China. Furthermore, it appears that not only is China ahead of NASA when it comes to sun-powered renewable energy, but they are actually at the forefront of solar energy development as a whole. Solar panels created by scientists in China are said to be some of the best in the world, collecting energy 24 hours a day, all year long. And China also has the largest solar farm in the world, which is so immense it can actually be seen from space. On top of all of this, the country has recently revealed plans to launch a commercial-scale solar-powered station in orbit by the year 2050, allowing them to directly harness the sun's energy from space and far surpass NASA's solar abilities to date.
Starting off, we are talking about the argument of high probability. Some philosophers, like Nick Bostrom, have cooked up a theory that feels like it can't be real, but it is actually taken quite seriously by some scientists. They say there's a high chance that we are living in a simulation. Bostrom argues that one of these 3 scenarios is probably true. First, that extinction is the norm. Almost all civilizations out there, like ours, never make it past a certain point. They wipe themselves out or get destroyed before they can really get advanced technology. It's a little bit terrifying, right? Imagine countless civilizations reaching the brink of greatness only to fall into the abyss of extinction. It's like cosmic Russian roulette. The second scenario is that no one's playing games. The advanced civilizations that do make it decide running simulations of their past, like their own version of super advanced ancestry.com, is boring or pointless. So they don't bother creating these massive virtual worlds to see what their ancestors were like. The third scenario is that this is all make-believe. Definitely the scariest of the scenarios, that we are actually living in a giant computer game right now. That our entire universe with its stars, planets, and morning coffee is just some super advanced alien software running on a cosmic computer. So why is this unsettling? Well, if we're in a simulation, then who's controlling it? What happens if they decide to hit the off switch? It's like being a character in someone else's video game, and it makes you wonder, are our choices really our own, or are we just following the pre-written code of some cosmic programmer? This theory gives a whole new meaning to the question, what is reality? And honestly, it's a little bit spooky when you really think about it. Next, we are talking about the second law of infodynamics. So a physicist studying the mutations of the SARS-CoV-2 virus has stirred up quite the conversation with claims that hint we might be living in a simulated universe. Dr. Melvin Vopson, the scientist behind these claims, introduces, quote, the second law of infodynamics, suggesting that mutations in the virus aren't random but follow this new law. He's found that information entropy, a measure of disorder from an information perspective, decreases over time in these mutations, opposing what we see with typical entropy, which increases. This discovery is more than just a quirky observation. Vopson argues it could flip our understanding of evolution on its head and even hint at a universe that's more orderly and deterministic than we thought. He connects this to the idea that the universe might be a giant simulation, designed with data optimization to minimize computational needs. In his studies, particularly with the ever-mutating SARS-CoV-2, Vopson has observed patterns that he believes can't be dismissed as random. He suggests that if we start viewing genetic mutations deterministically, we could potentially predict mutations before they happen, which which could revolutionize genetic therapies and vaccine development. However, the physics community is still skeptical, and more research is needed to test these very bold ideas. Vopson's theory, while intriguing, remains on the fringe, and proving it might involve experiments that check if information itself has mass, a concept that could tie back to everything from the heat death of the universe to why symmetry is so common in nature. So while the second law of infodynamics opens up fascinating possibilities, it is a long road from hypothesis to accepted science, especially with claims this big. But who knows? Sometimes the strangest ideas lead to the most profound discoveries. Next, we are talking about the limitations in the laws of physics. So think about the speed of light. Nothing can go faster, right? It's like the universe has a top speed limit, and no matter what you do, you can't break it. This reminds some people of a video game, where the game can only process things so fast, so it sets limits to keep everything running smoothly. Then there's the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, a weird rule in quantum mechanics that says you can't know both the position and the speed of a tiny particle at the same time. It's as if the universe saves on processing power by not deciding where something is until it absolutely has to, kind of like a game that only loads the parts of the world you're looking at to save memory. These rules of physics might make you wonder if they're just programming constraints in a giant cosmic simulation set up to keep things manageable for whatever's running the show. Isn't it a bit like we're living in a cleverly crafted game where certain things are off limits to prevent the whole system from crashing? It's definitely a wild thought, but it sure makes you look at those science class lessons a little bit differently. Next, we are talking about the observer effect. So have you ever heard of the downright bizarre behavior of particles in the quantum world? In quantum mechanics, things get really weird because particles, like electrons, don't settle on a specific location or path until we actually check up on them. Kind of like they're all potential and no decision until observed. This quirkiness is known as quantum indeterminacy and the observer effect. So now think about how video games work. Alright, it's just the easiest parallel, so there's going to be a lot of video game talk. They don't bother rendering every single part of the game world all at once. Instead, they only show you what's in your current view to save on the processing power. It's like the game is saying, why bother with the rest if you're not even looking there? This is eerily similar to what's happening at the quantum level. It's as if our universe is running a super efficient simulation, doing calculations only when necessary to make sure it doesn't waste any resources. This parallel makes some folks wonder if maybe, just maybe, we're living in some sort of cosmic video game where things aren't fully decided until they need to be. Next, we are talking about mathematical consistencies. Have you ever noticed how everything in the universe seems to follow a specific set of rules, almost like it's all part of a gigantic mathematical equation? Pretty wild when you actually think about it, from the way the planets orbit the sun to how your coffee spreads out when you spill it. There's math everywhere. This isn't just a coincidence. The universe is actually incredibly consistent and can be described really well using mathematical principles, just like a computer program. This consistency is what gets some people thinking. Maybe our universe is a bit like a game or a simulation. I mean, really just think about it. In video games, everything from the graphics to the physics is governed by code, by math. So when scientists find that even the most chaotic and complex systems in our universe can still be nailed down with equations, it makes you wonder if there's some sort of computational foundation underneath it all. So why is this exciting? Well, it suggests that maybe our whole universe could be running on a vast cosmic computer with every star, planet, and galaxy following a set of mathematical instructions. It's like the universe is a giant puzzle and math is the key to unlocking its secrets. I feel like that's a nightmare for a lot of us. Like, oh no, not math. The one thing I can't understand. I actually like math. Well, I guess we all have to. Next, we are talking about the anomalies in the cosmic microwave background. So for this one, we are taking a look at the universe's oldest light, that is, the cosmic microwave background, also known as the CMB. This is like the universe's baby picture, taken shortly after the Big Bang. Now, this light should be pretty uniform, but scientists have noticed some weird patterns and anomalies in it. It's as if the universe has a slight glitch, or a kind of a cosmic watermark showing up in this ancient glow. Some folks think these odd patterns might be like the digital artifacts you see in images that have been compressed too much, or when your video game starts showing weird lines because of a graphics bug. What's super intriguing is that these anomalies could hint at a digital grid, or a kind of underlying scaffold to space-time, sort of like how pixels build up your screen. If our universe were a simulation, you might expect to see some clues at the largest scales, and these odd patterns in the CMB are like potential Easter eggs left by the universe's programmers. Next, we are talking about Godel's incompleteness theorems. So these theorems are like the ultimate brain teasers of the math world. They tell us that if you have a robust enough system of math, the kind you could use to describe, say, the entire universe, there are always going to be some puzzles you can't solve, no matter how hard you try. It's like having a never-ending list of riddles where some just don't have an answer. Now, think about a computer simulation. Even the most powerful video game or simulation has its limits. There are certain things that it just can't compute or display. Godel's theorems suggest something similar about our universe. There might be cosmic rules that are kind of like a computer's programming constraints. These unprovable truths could mean we're in a giant cosmic simulation where some things are set up just so the system can keep running without crashing. It's a mind-bending idea that maybe some of the mysteries in the universe are unsolvable because they're built into the code of our reality. Next, we are talking about the bootstrap paradox, which in physics is like a cosmic chicken or the egg scenario that really twists your brain. Imagine you write a story where a scientist receives a mysterious notebook from the future filled with ideas that they then publish. Where did the original idea come from? Similarly, in physics, we have laws that could potentially explain how entire universes, including one like ours, might be created. It's as if the universe could contain the recipe for making more universes, including itself. This kind of mind-bending, self-creating loop is like a video game where characters discover they can design and spawn new levels, or even new games from within the game they're already playing. It suggests our universe could be just one level in an epic cosmic game, constantly spawning new universes in a never-ending cycle. So next time you're pondering the mysteries of the cosmos, consider that maybe we're in a universe that's bootstrapping itself into existence. Next, we are talking about the black hole information paradox. Imagine you toss your favorite book into a black hole, a bit dramatic, I know. According to the rules of quantum mechanics, the information in that book should be preserved somewhere, somehow, because in the quantum world, information never really disappears. But black holes, these cosmic vacuum cleaners, seem to suck everything in and let nothing out, not even light, which makes it look like the information just vanishes from the universe. This dilemma is what scientists call the black hole information paradox. Now here's where things get really sci-fi. Some smart folks think this paradox could be a clue that we are living in a cosmic hologram. They suggest that all the information swallowed by the black hole might actually be stored on its surface, kind of like how your phone stores stuff in the cloud. I'm still trying to figure out what the cloud is. This idea is part of the holographic principle, which hints that our entire 3D universe might be a projection from a 2D boundary. This very mind-bending concept fits nicely with the simulation hypothesis, suggesting that what we experience as three-dimensional could be just another level of grand cosmic simulation. And finally on our list today, we are talking about tampering with the experiment. So imagine if we found out for sure that our whole life is just a massive computer game and everything we've just spoken about is in fact true. Now that's what Professor Preston Green from Nanyang Technological University in Singapore is thinking about. He's pretty worried that if our scientists ever manage to prove that we are living in a simulation, it could cause a huge mess. So here's the deal. According to Green, if we start running experiments and suddenly figure out that yes, we are indeed a simulation. This could really mess up the whole point of why we're being simulated in the first place. Green suggests that if we get too nosy and prove that we're just bits of data in a cosmic computer, the beings running this show might just hit the off switch. Why? Well, because if we know we're in a simulation, then we'll probably change our behavior so much that the simulation stops being useful for whatever questions our creators are trying to answer about their own world. So, while it's fun and kind of weird to think about being in a giant video game, Green warns that proving it could lead to game over for all of us. So just be careful, you know? They have questions for us, buddy, I got questions for them, okay?
One of the biggest questions on a lot of people's minds is, why haven't we been back to the moon? There were a handful of missions from 1969 to 1972, and then that was that. Yeah, we went a few times, nothing left to see here. Now NASA has said they've just turned their attention to other projects, but really? We don't want to do any archaeological digs up there, see if we can find any signs of maybe alien life having visited at some point? You know, build some crap up there maybe? Nothing? Interest in exploring the moon has basically dropped off completely at this point, and that's led some to believe that we never even made it up there in the first place.
Okay, next up we have the fact that all of the original footage of the Apollo 11 moon landing taken by the NASA organization somehow got erased. Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to call BS on this one, because first of all, how the hell do you just accidentally erase the footage of one of the most historically important moments of all time? And second of all, if the footage was actually lost or erased, how did it not become an international scandal ending with somebody publicly losing their job and being collectively condemned by the entire country? In 2006, NASA said the tapes were lost, and then in 2009, they claimed that the tapes had ended up in a pile with 200,000 others that became degaussed, meaning magnetically erased. I mean, you're kidding, right? The tapes were then restored by experts, meaning that if someone were to claim that the tapes are fake because of the fact that the video has clear markers of alteration, all NASA would have to do is claim that those alterations were necessary in order to restore the video. I'm just not buying it.
Another detail many moon landing deniers point to is the Neil Armstrong reflection discrepancy. Allow me to explain. In this iconic photo of Buzz Aldrin on the moon, eagle-eyed conspiracy theorists noticed something quite peculiar: Neil Armstrong's reflection in Aldrin's visor. That's not the peculiar part, I'm getting to it. The plot thickens when they realize Armstrong's hands are seemingly empty, prompting the question, where on Earth, or shall I say, where on the moon, is Armstrong's camera? Did Armstrong even take the photo at all? NASA insists he did, but it doesn't look like it. If not him, then who though? Did E.T. decide to snap a pic for them? Or was this whole thing shot on a soundstage in California? Or of course, there's the possibility that NASA must have some snazzy, like cameraless photography technology up their sleeves. Now, some people say it's just a case of perspective and timing. Armstrong's camera was positioned in a way that it just wasn't captured in the reflection, but I don't think Hannah's next point is gonna be as easy to explain.
Next up, apparently not only does NASA spread misinformation, but they also distribute disingenuous artifacts. In 1963, after NASA supposedly successfully completed the Apollo 11 mission, 3 of the astronauts visited the Netherlands, during which time the United States ambassador accompanying the trio gave the Dutch Prime Minister what he claimed was a moon rock, but has since been identified as nothing more than petrified wood that has never been anywhere near the surface of the moon. When this information came out, the US Embassy was unable to explain why that would have happened or how, but they claim they were investigating. Whatever that means. None of you should be surprised to learn that the supposed investigation went absolutely nowhere, and to this day there is no reasoning behind why the Netherlands would have been given a fraudulent artifact once valued at $500,000 US, but now valued at around $70.
Here's another hot take. What if the moon landing really was a success, but there are just details we haven't been told? Maybe on that last mission to the moon in 1972, they saw something that made them never want to come back. We may look at images of the moon and see it as nothing but an empty mass of rock and sand, but there's a whole side of the moon humans have never set foot on, the dark side. And we really aren't 100% sure what could be lurking over there. There's a good chance it's just more of the same boring crap we have on the light side, but could there also be an entire species of creatures dwelling in the dark craters and recesses of the moon? Could these creatures have slithered from their shadows to give a grave warning to the astronauts of the Apollo 17 mission to never return? To buzz off? Possible.
Next up, we have the death of Gus Grissom, an incredibly popular astronaut who was an incredibly outspoken critic of NASA's space program during his time working for the agency. While Grissom did become the third person to fly into space, he still didn't believe that NASA had either the knowledge nor the technology to make it all the way to the moon, an opinion he wasn't afraid to share with the public. While training for the Apollo 1 mission, after communications failed during a test, Grissom stated, "How are we going to get to the moon if we can't talk between 2 or 3 buildings?" He also picked a lemon from his backyard and tied it to the spacecraft as a joke, saying that the technology was a lemon and not nearly advanced enough to make it to the moon. In another controversial move, Gus held an impromptu, unauthorized press conference criticizing the space program. Many believe that because of all of this, NASA, in collaboration with the CIA, decided to take him out. During an underground simulation, a spark underneath Grissom's seat ignited a fire that claimed the lives of himself, Ed White, and Roger Chaffee. Some people believe that the 3 men actually died after cyanide gas was released into the cabin to kill them, and that the fire was used as a cover-up, but as always, I want to know what you think.
Here's another fishy part of the whole moon landing thing. All those sick pics Buzz and Neil took up there. Some of them look really a little too gorgeous and pristine. Now, it's not like you couldn't get quality pictures back in the late 60s. I mean, like, have you seen 2001: A Space Odyssey? That movie looks like it could have come out last year. But for 2 astronauts untrained in the ways of the camera, having just risked their lives flying up to space, who have then just set foot on a place no one has ever set foot on before, out in space, like, with all that excitement, all those nerves, somehow they're gonna snap these cinema quality pictures. I've looked through old family photo albums. Even home pictures from the 90s look like junk. So my point is, what's the deal with that?
Speaking of the Space Odyssey, what if what we are all thinking right now is true and the moon landing was really faked? Because of course we are all thinking that right now. Well, how the hell would they have done it? The answer to that question is actually quite simple. Stanley Kubrick, you know, the guy who directed A Space Odyssey as well as The Shining. Well, many people believe that the guy not only directed award-winning movies, but also internationally deceiving publicity stunts as well. Shortly after footage of the moon landing was released, Kubrick got to work on The Shining, which was absolutely chock full of references to the Apollo 11 manned mission to the moon. The first and most obvious being that the character Danny is wearing an Apollo 11 sweater in the film. The second being room 237, which didn't actually exist in the hotel where the movie was filmed, but was added in reference to the moon, which sits just about 237 miles from Earth. Room 237 is also the room in which Kubrick supposedly staged the moon landing in the NASA headquarters. As we heard James say, clearly he had the technology. We saw it in Space Odyssey, so this is probably just Space Odyssey Part 2, another day at work for the guy. You can also see Tang cans, which are a space food made for astronauts in the movie, and the carpets in the movie have a pattern matching that of the launch pad in which Apollo 11 took off from. Did they though? Did they?
On any movie set, you also need some props, right? For example, Hannah and I's wardrobe here at Most Amazing Top 10 is carefully curated and tailored on the daily. Well, one photograph taken on the moon shows a rock with a very intriguing marking on it, something that looks a lot like the letter C. You see, some folks scoured photos taken on the Apollo 11 mission and were surprised to see the C, so they analyzed what they saw and decided this one rock must have been a fake. See if you can see this C in this photograph they saw. I certainly see what they saw. That's a C to me. So the question is, how did the great Stanley Kubrick, of all people, manage to let something like this slip? It's almost a bigger mystery in itself, right? I mean, he must have been pretty spaced out. He had spent all this time working on 2001, after all, which came out the year before the Apollo 11 mission. Maybe he was just bored of all the science fiction stuff and got a bit lazy. I can see it.
So, if the moon landing really was faked, why was it faked? Well, there's a few reasons as to why the United States would have wanted the rest of the world to believe that they were capable of becoming the first nation to make it to the moon. One, of course, being bragging rights, or in political terms, national prestige. A demonstration of the nation's amazing scientific and engineering capabilities that could be used as an intimidation tactic during the Cold War. It also incentivized foreign countries to invest in and become allies to the United States, so a bit of a win-win there for them. Not to mention, there was also a massive amount of political pressure on the US after President John F. Kennedy challenged its greatest minds to succeed in sending a man to the moon before the end of the decade. They made it just in time. Coincidence? You tell me, but here's the thing. You're going to tell me that no mission prior to Apollo 11 was a success, but all of a sudden, a team of 3 astronauts make it to the moon and back completely unharmed? I don't know. It seems pretty far-fetched if you ask me.
Now, resources. They're what human beings have been fighting over since the dawn of time. Resources mean life or death, and in space travel, water, food, and oxygen are limited. It's one of the main reasons why prolonged space travel has been so tough to figure out. One of the biggest fears is running out of oxygen. Spacecraft rely on complex life support systems to generate oxygen from water, but any malfunction could lead to a shortage. And the thought of being stranded in the black void of space, slowly running out of air, knowing there's no way help can reach you in time, is pretty terrifying. Astronauts also need water, not just for drinking, also for cooking and hygiene. In space, water has to be carefully recycled from every possible source, including urine and sweat. Yes, sending water up into space is expensive, as is, so astronauts on the ISS are already working with a short supply, so imagine being out deep into space. The fear here is that any failure in the recycling system could deplete the water supply, and then of course we have food. Gotta make sure there's enough food to last the entire journey. Space food is specifically prepared to stay edible for long periods, but if supplies were to somehow run out or become contaminated, they'd be screwed. And again, this is more manageable on the ISS, so close to Earth, but if a manned crew was deep out into space, a resupply would of course take a much longer time to reach them. There have even been situations on the International Space Station where there have been delays that have happened with supplies of food and water. Rockets have been sent up from Earth, but stuff's gone wrong and supplies have been delayed getting there. It can be a real issue. All right, in shows like Star Trek, it always seems like space is just this empty void you could just fly through no problem until you come in contact with another ship or a planet, but things wouldn't be quite as smooth sailing in real life. Space is full of debris. You have micrometeoroids, for example, which are tiny particles of rock or metal that travel through space at extremely high speeds, and even though they're small, they can cause serious damage if they collide with a spacecraft or spacesuit. Imagine traveling millions of miles from Earth, knowing that at any moment a tiny invisible particle could just puncture the hull of your ship. Even closer to Earth, we have leftover pieces of old satellites and discarded rocket parts and stuff. Most of it is still orbiting around Earth, and there have been situations where stuff has crashed into the International Space Station. Unlike larger objects that can be tracked and avoided, smaller threats are harder to detect and can hit without warning. And forget the ship, what if a spacesuit is punctured during a spacewalk? NASA does use shielding to help protect against debris, but it's impossible to eliminate the risk altogether. One of the biggest dangers to human health is extreme temperatures, and space can be extremely cold or intensely hot, with no atmosphere to moderate the temperature. Objects in space can experience temperatures from hundreds of degrees below zero to hundreds of degrees above, depending on their exposure to the sun. In deep space, when an object is in direct sunlight, it can get incredibly hot, but in the shadow of a planet or when the sun is blocked, temperatures can plummet. And this drastic difference in temperature can happen really quickly which can be a big problem for both astronauts and their equipment. For astronauts, it's spacewalks where this can be the most dangerous. Spacesuits are designed to protect against fluctuations in temperature, but any malfunction or damage to the suit and you could suffer from hyperthermia or hypothermia. And for the spacecraft, well, temperature changes cause things to expand and contract. So if we did happen to be on a massive journey deep into space, who knows what the constant expansion and contraction would do to the ship over time. Another concern is gravitational anomalies, regions of space with unexpected gravitational forces that could trap a spacecraft in a dangerous zone. Space is unpredictable. The idea of encountering regions where the gravitational pull is stronger or weaker than anticipated is a real concern. This could cause the ship to veer off course, or worse, it could get caught in a gravitational trap, almost like a whirlpool, like just stuck in orbit, leaving everyone stranded, floating in orbit until all the food and water runs out. Very scary thought. Another dangerous aspect of space travel is the exposure to harmful radiation. Not sure if you're aware of this, but human beings aren't really built for flying through space. We, as well as everything else on this planet, is perfectly suited for Earth. The atmosphere and magnetic field protect us from harmful cosmic and solar radiation, but in space, there is no protection. Astronauts are constantly bombarded by high energy particles, and radiation exposure can cause immediate and long-term health issues. There's a chance of radiation sickness, which causes nausea, vomiting, and fatigue, which sucks on its own, but it can also impair an astronaut's ability to perform tasks. And in space, where one wrong move can spell disaster, that's a bit of a problem. Long-term exposure is even more concerning. Over time, radiation can damage DNA, increasing the risk of cancers or even genetic mutations. The possibility of developing cancer years after a mission is a risk astronauts decide to take on. It's not just an astronaut's health radiation can affect, though, but their equipment as well. Radiation can interfere with the electronics on a spacecraft, causing malfunctions. This would be especially dangerous in deep space, where help would be far away and repairs would have to be made with whatever resources the crew would have on hand. Malfunction in navigation, communication, or, heaven forbid, life support systems would be catastrophic. Now, NASA spacecrafts are designed with shielding to protect against radiation and limit the time astronauts spend in space to reduce exposure, but no matter how much we prepare, the dangers of radiation in deep space are always a threat because things won't always go as planned. And solar flares could make things even worse. Sudden bursts of radiation from the sun can be difficult to predict. Sleep is just as essential to us as food and water, and sleep can be a bit of a problem in space. We've evolved here on Earth with a day and night cycle. It's built into our bodies to be awake during the day and asleep at night. And when that sleep cycle gets messed up, we get messed up. If you've ever spent all day at school and then worked all through the night, you know how detrimental it is to your physical and mental health over time, and it really doesn't take that long. In space, where there's no natural day and night cycle, astronauts can struggle to keep up with a healthy sleep pattern. I mean, the lights are always on, and there's no real sense of time passing, not to mention they sleep upright. The disruption to the body's internal clock can lead to insomnia, fatigue, irritability, or worse. And on top of that, you have the other effects of space travel, like muscle atrophy, and poor sleep can just make this even worse. Then your immune system is weakened, making you more susceptible to illness. So yeah, long duration missions are a big risk. An obvious danger of exploring the far reaches of space is, of course, encountering other life forms. It would be cool, or at least it could be. It could also be an absolute worst case scenario. With billions of galaxies and potentially trillions of planets, the possibility of encountering extraterrestrial life, whether intelligent or not, is a fun idea. But what could these life forms be like? How might they interact with us? We often picture highly advanced and intelligent aliens bent on world domination, like in War of the Worlds, but the motivations of a potential extraterrestrial species are completely unknown. Even unintelligent life forms could be dangerous. Maybe they'd be hostile in a wild animal kind of way. And even if they weren't, another concern is the potential for biological contamination, beings that carry viruses or illnesses that we have no way of dealing with. If astronauts came in contact with alien microbes or organisms, there is a risk that these life forms could, hitch a ride with us back to Earth and then cause even more problems. Being millions or even billions of miles away from Earth means complete isolation, aside from the other astronauts on your crew. Isolation and the psychological impact of it has to be one of the most daunting things about deep space travel. Not only is there no immediate help for emergencies, but the extreme isolation can take a pretty heavy toll on an astronaut's mental health. I mean, this is already something that's known to happen. And if we were to start traveling deeper and deeper into the abyss, this would become an even bigger issue. To be confined in a small spacecraft for months or even potentially years with only a few other people for company, the sense of loneliness can be overwhelming. Communication with Earth would be delayed and limited, and the monotony of space travel would also just be mentally exhausting. Seeing the same small group of idiots in the same environment well, they're not idiots, they're astronauts for God's sakes, but you start to feel like they're idiots, I imagine, after a while. Everyone gets on your nerves eventually. And, no option to step outside for a breath of fresh air, or just to change the scenery. It's just black, and then stars, and then gotta be incredibly claustrophobic. Now, astronauts know what they're getting into, and they train for this, of course, but can any amount of training really prepare you for potentially spending years out there? The fear of the unknown is one of humanity's greatest fears, and we know basically nothing about what is truly out there in the far reaches of space. Look at how many ships have met tragic ends exploring the ocean. The dangerous storms, the wildlife, the treacherous currents. Who the hell knows what horrors are out in space? We can predict some of the dangers we could face in space, like on this list, but there is still stuff that's unexplained. The bursts of energy, anomalies in space-time, unidentified objects of some kind. Stuff we just can't fully explain or even comprehend. Stuff we can never prepare for before we come face to face with it. And unfortunately, the first ones to find out likely won't make it home to tell the tale.
But we have the Bermuda Triangle. The Bermuda Triangle is the mecca when it comes to mysterious disappearances and rumors and urban legends, so of course it had to make it onto this list. The triangle, which sits in between Florida, Puerto Rico, and Bermuda, earned its deadly reputation starting back in the 1970s. Since then, there has been about 80 aircrafts and 60 boats that have gone missing in the triangle, which only fueled rumors that there was some sort of force or supernatural cause that was making this area one where people would often go missing. There have been intense electrical forces and tunnel-like clouds reported in the triangle, which some believe is the cause for the disappearances. Some others believe it's weather patterns, some believe it's the entrance to a parallel universe or a place where aliens like to abduct their victims, and some people like to dismiss the idea that there's any sort of mystery at all. At this point, exactly what is going on with the Bermuda Triangle remains a mystery. In our number 9 spot today, we have the Oregon Vortex. Just off of Interstate 5 in southern Oregon lies what is called the Oregon Vortex. According to local legend, it is said that this area and the strange and mysterious stories surrounding it aren't just modern legends, but that perhaps it stems back further. People have said that the stories of the Oregon Vortex actually stem back to when Indigenous Americans referred to it as the Forbidden Land. It is said that during these times, people traveling on horses would often find that their horses would be refusing to go into the area, so clearly something strange was going on in there that was spooking the animals. Scientists have speculated that the land might contain some kind of crossed magnetic lines that produce some sort of force field, but whatever it really is, the place is truly strange. Things appear very differently here. It's sort of like an optical illusion. The area is basically a parallel universe in itself. In our number 8 spot today, we have the Challenger Deep. The Challenger Deep is the deepest known point in our ocean, around 10,900 meters deep. It is located in the Pacific Ocean in the southern part of the Mariana Trench, and because of its location, lack of light, and immense pressure, it hasn't been explored very much. The extreme environment has certainly set up for there to be a whole host of species that we know absolutely nothing about, but it is not an area that can be easily explored by humans. The Challenger Deep has only been visited 4 times and only for short periods of time, so there is so much more that is waiting to be uncovered at this deep, dark part of our ocean, and I don't know about you, but I feel like there are insane amounts of ocean creatures that could fully be aliens. They are so strange and interesting and unique, so who in the world knows what really lurks down there. In our number 7 spot today, we have Point Nemo. I'm sure there's a few of us out there who dream of time alone, away from other people, and Point Nemo is exactly that. It's like a parallel universe where if you were to visit, you'd feel like you were the only person on Earth. This is the most remote location on Earth. It's officially known as the oceanic hole of inaccessibility because it is the furthest point away from land. This area is surrounded by more than 1,000 miles of ocean in every direction. There are obviously no humans who live even close to Point Nemo, which is why it is called that in the first place, Nemo being Latin for no one. This location is so isolated that the closest people to Nemo aren't even on this Earth. Since the inhabited areas closest to the point is over 1,000 miles away, the humans aboard the ISS are way closer than anyone on land. Truly just wild. Kind of sounds like a dream, kind of sounds like a nightmare. In our number 6 spot today, we have Kawah Ijen. Located in Indonesia, this is one of the most remarkable and interesting places on Earth. Firstly, this active volcano emits hot, flammable, sulfurous gases. These gases ignite as they enter the oxygen-rich atmosphere of Earth, and this causes them to burn with a stunning blue flame. Further scientific processes also allows for there to be a flow of molten sulfur that also has that same striking blue flame. At night is really when you get quite a show from this coloring, as it quite literally looks like a flow of blue lava. The other incredible thing about this location is that there is a 1 kilometer wide caldera that is filled with turquoise blue water. The watercolor, while it looks gorgeous, is a result of extreme acidity as well as a high concentration of dissolved metals. It is an astonishing place to look at and really is quite magnificent. In our number 5 spot today, we have the Devil's Kettle. This area is said to hold one of Minnesota's greatest mysteries. As the Brule River flows through in order to make its way toward Lake Superior, there is a point where it makes an 800-foot drop in 8 miles. Because of this journey, through time, waterfalls have been created as the water erodes the rocky terrain. One waterfall in particular is the one that we want to talk about today. The stream splits into two as it falls over the edge. One of the two streams flows exactly how you would think it does, while the other is a little more mysterious. On this side, the water rushes into a cavern that seems to go nowhere. The cavern never fills up somehow, but no one can figure out where the water is going. It's a strange phenomena that has resulted in the fall gaining the nickname the Devil's Kettle. It is said that people have tried to place things in the water that might help show them where the water is flowing to, but despite these efforts, the items were just never seen again. In our number 4 spot today, we have the Pyramids of Giza. One of the most mysterious places on Earth has to be the Pyramids of Giza. I mean, how? For centuries, people have wondered and tried to find answers as to how they were built at all, let alone with limited resources and without the use of modern technology. And they've been around for the last 4,000 years, so the durability alone is outstanding. This alone is the source of much mystery, but that's only the outside of them. What lies on the inside might just be even more so. The Pyramids of Giza, especially the Great Pyramid of Giza, were believed to have been built as tombs for rulers and other wealthy people. That totally makes sense, except for the fact that there hasn't been any mummies found inside of them. Instead, there is just a plethora of secret, unexplored rooms, hidden doors and mirrors, you know, just regular ancient Egypt stuff. Many of these secret rooms remain completely unexplored over fear of damage. One more strange thing about these incredible creations, before we move on though, they were built on the center of the Earth. However they did this, they aligned them perfectly with Orion's belt, with no technology, just pure brilliance. I'm just saying, if anywhere is going to take you to a parallel universe, these pyramids will take you back in time to a completely different world. In our number 3 spot today, we have the Crooked Forest. Forests are already creepy. This one looks like it's straight out of a Tim Burton film. The Crooked Forest in Poland. There's around 400 odd-shaped pine trees near the town Gryfino. These trees are about 90 years old, and all of them, from the base, they immediately bend towards the north and then slowly curve back towards the sky like the other trees. Despite the odd bend, these trees are otherwise healthy. There's been so many theories, but none of them really stick. Some suggest it was a gravitational anomaly, but that's a little too far-fetched for me. I don't know. This isn't Interstellar, right? Other theories claim that there were heavy snowfalls that would weigh down the branches, which could check out, but why is it just a select amount? I've also lived in Canada my entire life. We have lots of snow, and I've never seen a Sleepy Hollow tree before. My favorite theory is that farmers were trying to make the tree curved on purpose to make stronger wheels because the grain direction would make for naturally curved wheels. Again though, nobody knows for sure. What are your thoughts? Do we like the wheel theory? I'm just gonna keep a spare tree tire just in case. Keep it stored safely in the trunk. Okay, jokes. I'm funny. In our number 2 spot today, we have the Catatumbo River. Basically, in western Venezuela, right over the Catatumbo River, there are these insane, intense lightning storms, and it's a complete atmospheric phenomenon. This lightning occurs 140 to 160 nights a year, 9 hours per day, and from 16 to 40 times per minute. That is absolutely insane. That is so much lightning. Another thing that's so fascinating about this lightning is that it is colorful, and it doesn't produce any thunder. The lightning does change its frequency up from time to time, and at one point it stopped for a few weeks, and people thought that maybe it was going to have been exhausted forever, but that changed when the lightning came back, putting it right back on our list of mysteries that we just can't quite figure out. Many people have studied the lightning, trying to figure out how exactly it has been created and what makes this phenomena what it is, but we just aren't quite sure yet. And finally, in our number 1 spot today, we have the reverse waterfall. This mysterious and strange location is another one that comes from India. Here there is a waterfall, but it's got a catch. While we all of course expect to see water cascading down when we think of a waterfall, this strange location instead sees the water moving towards the sky. Some people believe it's because of some anti-gravitational force, others think it's due to the heavy air pressure, and I'm not a scientist, so I'll let you decide. While this is certainly quite a strange place, it also definitely delivers when it comes to beauty. I think even if the water flowed down like a normal waterfall, this area would still see a lot of tourists just because of the immense natural beauty.
List with something pretty exciting. Possible alien megastructures on Tabby's star. So Tabby's star, scientifically known as KIC 8462852, which I think is a much catchier title. Tabby's star, just a bit of a mouthful. But it's become pretty popular in recent years. Astronomers have spotted unusual and irregular dimming patterns on the star. The star's brightness dims unpredictably, and at times way more than what's expected for your typical star. So because of the strangeness that seems to be going on with this star, it's led some to speculate that there could be alien megastructures on it. And yes, even scientists are saying it's a possibility. I know it sounds wild, but the idea is that advanced extraterrestrial civilizations might be constructing massive structures like Dyson spheres or swarms around the star. And the purpose of these hypothetical megastructures could be to intentionally block or harvest the star's light to be used as energy. This would cause the dimming effect that we see. Now, this is just one speculative hypothesis. There are others, but it's pretty cool to think that this may be a genuine sign of life out there in space. Next, let's talk about fast radio bursts. So fast radio bursts, or FRBs, are powerful, fleeting signals from deep space that last just a fraction of a second, up to 3 seconds at the most. Scientists use radio telescopes to detect these bursts, but they're still not exactly sure what causes them. One theory is that FRBs could be born from cataclysmic events like collisions between neutron stars and black holes, creating ripples in space-time that generate these intense signals. And there is also the possibility that they come from advanced extraterrestrial civilizations. What makes FRBs so strange, though, is the amount of energy that they send out. In just a millisecond, these bursts release as much energy as our sun emits in 3 entire days. And what's frustrating, though, is that they appear so sporadically, it's really tough to sit down and study them. So while there are possibilities as to what could be causing these signals, they're still pretty much a complete mystery. The Great Attractor. Now that sounds like some cosmic horror right there, and it kinda is. The Great Attractor is a massive gravitational area of the universe that's pulling our Milky Way galaxy and numerous other galaxies toward it. And yeah, that's kind of scary. The Great Attractor was first identified in the 70s when scientists noticed that our Milky Way, along with other galaxies around us, weren't moving in the direction that gravitational forces alone could explain. Something massive and hidden seemed to be tugging at everything. Now, we can't directly see the Great Attractor, so astronomers have to rely on indirect observations and measurements to understand its existence. It's this unseen force of nature, very Lovecrafty. It's thought to be a concentration of both visible and dark matter, which is the invisible substance that makes up a large part of the universe. More on that later. So what happens though when we eventually get pulled into whatever this thing is? Luckily we'll be long dead, so no point really worrying about it. But a great cosmic force like this, it really does remind us how small and insignificant we are in the grand scheme of things. Next up we have space orcs. Yes, astronomers have spotted orcs in space. Orc standing for odd radio circles. Not quite as exciting as spotting green goblin monsters in space, but also less alarming. Like, would we really be able to lay our heads down at night and sleep comfortably knowing there were orcs? I don't think so. So odd radio circles. These circles are strange astronomical objects, and scientists aren't entirely sure what causes them. Scientists have spotted them by scanning the sky using radio telescopes. They're basically circular formations and don't match any known astronomical objects or phenomena. They're not galaxies, they're not stars or supernova, they're a total mystery, and because of this, they have the nickname WTF. Now, some scientists think they could be shockwaves from cosmic events, like an explosion or a collision that creates ripples that we detect as circles, but they could also come from unknown objects or phenomena we just haven't discovered yet, which is pretty cool. We got a very large space rock coming our way, a mega comet. Now, luckily, it's going to pass us by about 1 billion miles and won't be coming until 2031, but this thing really is massive. This thing, which was first spotted in 2021, is the biggest ever observed comet. It's 100,000 times the mass of your average comet. The comet is so big that at first astronomers categorized it as a minor planet. What's freaky about this is that there's almost definitely much larger comets whizzing around out there, and although this one luckily isn't going to make contact with us, there could be another one hurtling our way as we speak. That just hasn't been spotted yet. Speaking of terrifying things hurtling towards us, let's talk about Andromeda. So Andromeda, the largest and nearest galaxy to our Milky Way, just happens to be on a collision course for it. One day it will collide with the Milky Way, and when the Milky Way and the Andromeda galaxies finally collide, it won't be a sudden smash. The process takes a very long time because of the vast distances between the stars, and stars are so far apart anyway that it's unlikely they'll collide individually. But the night sky will change, constellations will shift, the appearance of the night sky will be very different in the distant future. But this collision won't be happening until billions of years from now, so there's no need to really worry about it affecting life on Earth or even distant descendants of humanity. Fingers crossed we'll have gotten our act together and we'll be like far off on other planets by the time this happens. Next, let's talk about supernovas. Supernovas are incredibly powerful explosions that occur when massive stars reach the end of their lives. Now, the good news is that the nearest star capable of going supernova is still quite a distance away from us. We're talking many light years, but what if a supernova was so powerful that even if it was super far away, it could still affect us? What damage could it cause? Well, it could potentially affect Earth's atmosphere. The explosion releases an enormous amount of energy, including intense radiation, and this radiation, in theory, could interact with Earth's atmosphere, leading to the breakdown of the ozone layer. The ozone layer is crucial for life on Earth because it absorbs the majority of the sun's harmful UV radiation. So, in this situation, we'd be in pretty big trouble. We'd basically burn up like in Terminator 2. Next up, we have the mystery as to what dark matter and dark energy consists of. Now, we know there's a lot of stuff in a galaxy, stars, planets, and gas, but when scientists calculate all the visible matter, it's not enough. The galaxies are spinning faster than they should be based on what we can see. Something extra is needed to explain this, and that something is called dark matter. Dark matter doesn't emit, absorb, or reflect light, which is why we can't directly see it. It's the invisible scaffolding that's holding the visible parts of the galaxy together. But the invisible part, dark matter and dark energy, makes up 95% of the known universe, and that's a lot of mystery, energy, and matter. What we see, not just on a day-to-day basis here on Earth, but also when we look up at the billions of stars in the sky, that's still just barely even a sliver of reality. The universe is also constantly expanding. We know it's expanding because galaxies are slowly moving away from each other, but over time this expansion continues to speed up. Something is pushing the galaxies apart faster and faster. Scientists refer to this unseen energy as dark energy. Basically, dark matter is the invisible glue holding galaxies together, and dark energy is the mysterious repellent force making the universe expand. And we don't know what it is. Next on the list we have the Tunguska event. This was a powerful explosion that occurred on June 30th of 1908 near the Tunguska River in Siberia, Russia. It's known as one of the most mysterious events in modern history. So there was a large impact or explosion that flattened about 80 million trees over an area of about 830 square miles. The shock wave from the blast was felt thousands of kilometers away. Strangely though, there was no impact crater found at the site. This led scientists to conclude that whatever caused the event must have disintegrated in the Earth's atmosphere before reaching the ground. What most scientists think is that this was caused by the airburst of a large meteoroid or comet. The energy released by the explosion was estimated to be equivalent to 10 to 15 megatons of TNT, making it about 1,000 times more powerful than the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima. Luckily, this happened in a very remote area, so only trees were affected, but that also means there weren't many witnesses. But a handful of people did report seeing a bright bluish light in the sky, accompanied by a series of thunderous noises. But of course, there's always been this question as to whether this was caused by a space rock or something else. And finally, I couldn't make this list without discussing the WOW signal. The WOW was a strange radio signal detected by astronomer Jerry Amon in 1977 while he was studying radio waves from space. Because he couldn't make out what the hell the signal was, he just wrote WOW on the printout of the signal, thus it got that name. It was a unique and very strong radio frequency that lasted about 72 seconds and came from the direction of the constellation Sagittarius. The signal was at a frequency of 1420 megahertz, a frequency that's usually associated with hydrogen, the most abundant element in the universe. What's strange is that the signal was never detected again though. Scientists naturally figured if it was a natural phenomenon, it would repeat, but from what we know, this was just a one-time thing. So is it possible this signal could have come from maybe an alien spacecraft? Yeah, it's a possibility. The WOW signal is still known as the strongest candidate for extraterrestrial radio transmission ever detected.
Want to see more videos like this one? Check out this video next. It's about the legendary Titanoboa snake and the mysterious fossils that revealed a creepy clue. Click the video now to find out more.